That's it.
Okay, Rabotai, we are on Daf Yud Bet Amud Aleph 12a2. We were zocher to do, I think, like 5 lines of Gemara last time because we had some interesting diversions. Says the Gemara, or digressions. Amar Rabbi Avau. Rabbi Avau says, Arei Miklat lo netnu lekibura. The Arei Miklat, they were not set aside for kibura, which means that when we gave those cities to Leviim, their purpose was not for them to have burial there. What was this given to them for, this whole open area that was given to the Leviim? It was for their animals, it was for their property, for their things, for all they need for their life. But what does lechayatam tell you? Lechayim nitenu, it was given for life, v'lo lekivura, but not for burial. So if that's the case, you can't really bury in the cities of the Leviim because they were not given for that. Metvei, the Gemara asks, what are you talking about? We just got finished telling you and teaching this idea. Shama, that the person runs over there. Sham te dirato, there is where he lives. Sham te mitato, there's where he dies. Sham te kvurato, there's where he's buried. Until, as we saw, the Kohen Gadol dies. Once the Kohen Gadol dies, even though we interred him already, we disinter him. And we had a machloket, and we said that according to one opinion they must, according to another opinion they're allowed. But the point is that we would bury him, at least in the first place, we would bury him in that city. So how can it be that the cities of Leviim were not given for burial? Gemara says, Rotzeach Shani. When it comes to the killer, when we said that it's not for burial, we're talking about the Leviim. The Leviim don't use it for that. Chayatam is for their life and not for their death. But Rotzeach Shani, because the Torah said specifically that he's buried there. So it's true, you have an exclusion with regards to the Leviim on their burial, but with regards to Rotzeach, we have an inclusion, where it says Shama, that he should be buried there. The Mishnah continues, Kishem Shayir Kolete, just like the city, it's a safe space. It absolves you from being killed. So too, the areas around the city as well. If you remember, we discussed the idea that the farming land and the entire 2,000 amot, some people say 3,000 amot, is already a safe space. Says the Gemara, Viramini. Let's ask a question from the Braita. And whenever you see the word Viramini, it's holding up a Mishnah to a Braita. Mishnah is from Tanaic period. Braita is also from the Tanaic period. What's the difference between the two? The Mishnayot were the Braitot that Rabbi Yehuda decided that these are part of the canon of the Mishnayot. Okay, let's continue.
Well, what does that last part mean?
That means that these Braitot are the ones that Rabbi Yehuda chose as part of Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Right. The other Braitot were...
That's where they landed.
No, it's like, as an example, imagine there's lots of different laws all over the place. We take some of them and they make it into the Constitution or the laws of the state. But these other laws were just case law that were floating around. Right. Okay, which ones made it into the book, so to speak? Into
the Mishnah.
Is right with the teaching. Canon is Tanakh, but the point is that there's a set amount of books that were described as this is the body of law or this is the body of scripture. Okay.
How did he land on that?
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the one that made those decisions. Same thing with the Gemara, by the way. The Gemara also, Ravina and Rav Ashi are recording conversations that happened in the Midrash. They included some, they didn't include others. Who was the one that decided which ones made it in? Ravina and Rav Ashi. So same thing, okay? But the power of a Mishnah and a Braita in terms of their reliability and in terms of their inability to argue or not argue, Mishnah versus same. Okay, Viraminu, let's ask you a question from the Braita. The pasuk says, "V'yashav ba." The guy he lives in the town. Ba v'lo betchuma. He lives in that city, but not in the outlying areas. So how are you telling me that just like the city, kind of absolves you, welcomes you in, and is a safe space for you, so too is the tchum around the area. We have over here in a specific exclusion, via Shavba. He's not allowed to live there. Gemara says, Amar Abaye. Abaye says, guys, by the way, before you look at the answer, what's the answer of the Gemara going to be?
That he should be included?
One more time. we saw that if you make it to the Tchum, it's home base. The guy can't kill you anymore. Yes, the Gemara says, what do you mean? The Braita tells us, V'yashav ba, that when you live in the city, you only, the person who's going to live in the Ir Miklat, he's only able to live in the city. He's not able to live in the Tchum. So how can you tell me that it's a safe base? If you reach the Tchum, then you're safe. The guy can't kill you anymore. If it says, you V'yashav ba, they have to live in the city.
You have to live in the city, but it's like a quasi-state. You don't have to live there, but he can't kill you there.
Oh! All we said was koletet, that if you made it there, you're safe. We didn't say that you're allowed to dwell there, you're going to live there for the rest of the time. Says Abaye. See, every time you have a question, one thing or another, the first thing you do to resolve the question is look at the two things and say, are they the same? If they're not the same, there's no question.
I'm lost on the discrepancy. Can you explain?
I'm running from the guy. You're trying to kill me. I'm running. As soon as I get, this is the city, this is the Tchum. As soon as I get here, I am safe. Who said I could live there for the rest of the time?
No one.
That's just koletet. That means that once you get here, you can't kill me. Koletet means it absolves you. It's like you're on base. You can't be tug out. Okay? So as soon as I get here, I'm safe. Doesn't say that I could dwell here. I have to live in the city.
Dwell in the city.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Mishnah, the Braita that says V'yashav ba is talking about where you actually live. The Mishnah that tells you that koletet, that as soon as you get into the Tchum, you're already on home base. The guy can't kill you. That's just talking about whether you're safe or not. Yeah.
Are you now going to say that you can only bury in the city because you could only live in the
city? Let's see. Very good. Yes?
Why have that area that you're safe in but you can't dwell in? What's the purpose of it then?
Good question. But the Pasuk tells you that there's a klita of the Tchum of the city.
I have an answer.
Yeah?
Because the city borders sometimes change. City is livable and maybe losing the location. It's a difference between the edges of a city and the city. So that's the reason that you have like a place that is defining that the place that he lived and he's safe. Those things sometimes are not maybe changeable with the time.
Okay, perhaps. The reason why I'm saying it's a good question is because I want you to be comfortable with the fact that there are times when the Torah tells you a chidush. The Torah says, like as an example, he's allowed to chase you and kill you until he gets to the city, and then he's safe. What does that mean? The answer is, that's the halacha. There's a galut, and that's his kapara, and if you're not going to galut, he can kill you. But if you do go to galut, then you're already safe. So this says the Mishnah, what does it mean that you go into the place? It's the city and its tchum, and its outer limits, okay? So once I get to the outer limits, says the Gemara, the Braita says you have to live in the city. You're not in the tchum. So the answer is simply, okay, well, what does V'yashav ba actually say? You have to live in the city. That's what the Pasuk says. It doesn't say you have to live in the Tchum. So therefore, what we know about the Tchum is that you get safe when you get there. What we know about the city is that you have to live within it. That's what we know from the Pesukim. In other words, without any conjecture, without any logic, that's what it says, okay? What Nathan is saying is actually genius. Nathan asked a question. He just threw it out. Are we now going to say that you have to be buried in the city? What would the logic of that be?
Because you had those three expressions before. As you live in the city, you die in the city, you
we didn't say you live in the city. We just said Shama tehedirato.
Limited space.
Chai. You used the word chai.
Chai is for the Leviim. Chayatam is that the space of the Leviim was given to them for their life needs, not for their death needs. So you don't even know why what you said was so genius yet. That's Nathan. He's subconsciously, even when he doesn't know why he's a genius, he's a genius. Ready for this? It says, and the guy runs Shama. The drasha was Sham tehe dirato. That's where he should live. Sham tehe kevurato. The word was dirato, where you live. What do we just ascertain? That living only happens in the city. The same Shama of Dirato is Shama Kivurato. So what Nathan says is genius. If we just made this discrepancy of safety versus living, and in the living category, tied to the same word of living, is burial, we should be able to prove that the obligation of burial is not in the outer limits, it's in the city, because it's the same Shama. Very powerful question. Or maybe it's not a question, or maybe it's just a halakha. We'll see. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, excellent, like Jonathan said, lo kasha, no question. Kan liklot. The Mishnah is talking about safety. You got here, the guy can't kill you. Kan ladur. The Braita, what's telling you, the Yashav Ba, you have to live in the city, that already is to live. Now that we accept that that's from the Pasuk, is there any logic for this?
No.
The Din is saying no.
Because there could be an issue when you're born and living is also two different things.
No, I'm asking, is there any logic why we would obligate you? If you're safe in this place, why can't you live in this place?
You're not getting all the benefits.
Excellent. Maybe there's something in the city that we want you to have. Like the fact that the Leviim that are living in the city are going to be a good exposure. Right. So now you ran and you're living in the fields. What are you getting? You're getting nothing. So we want you, if you're going to live, we want you to live there. Okay. We would have to ask, by the way, then what would the benefit be of being buried in that place? Because you're not benefiting from them. Okay. Let's continue. But the derasha is shama shama. Okay. Let's continue. Says the Gemara, hold up, Abaya. We're not letting you get away with that. Ladur, right? If the Braita is telling you about living, right? That's how you're explaining the Braita. Tepokle, the enosin sedeh migrash. Let it turn out that you can't you can't make a sadeh, a field migrash, into an open area, right? V'lo migrash sadeh, and not an open area into a field. Lo migrash ir, not an open area into a city. V'lo ir, v'lo ir migrash. Mechila. Thank you. So, what are we learning from here? We're learning from here that all of these things which have a status, they shouldn't be easily changed. Let's take a look at the long Rashi. Where are you, Bert? The long Rashi. Long Rashi. Tepokle. We should learn from here. I have this, whatever's here. I think of it something stuff. Says the Gemara. Tepokle. Let's learn from here. The en bonin bayit b'migrash. You can't build a house in the field. The imken have a migrash ir. If you're telling me that there's different laws for the open area and for the city, how could you willy-nilly decide to use open area for housing, or to use housing for open area? You can't just make that decision, because there's different halachic ramifications for the status of what that thing is or isn't. One is for living, one is for safety. Says the Migrash, says the Rashi, like Migrash, what?
Sounds like a roof.
Yes. Says Rashi, Migrash, open area, shenitinu laleviim, alpaim amas levair. We gave each of the Leviim, the cities of the Leviim, 2,000 amot around the city, kidichtiv, umidota michutz la'ir, and their boundaries outside of the city, uchtiv, mikir ha'ir v'chutza, from the wall of the city and outward, 1,000 amah is 1,000 amot. Haketzad 1,000 amah, migrash she'en bo lo bait, v'lo sadeh, v'ashar sadot kiramim. What does it mean that there's 1,000 amot of migrash when it tells you that there's an outer reach of the city? Answers Rashi, there's a space which is used for the fields that the city needed to give the produce and all the food that the city might need. That space is one space. Further from that space is now an extra open field, which is only open, safe field for the guy, a safe area for the guy to get into. So you have migrash, open, then you have fields of produce, then you have the city where the inhabitants live.
So zoning laws.
Correct. Literally zoning laws. Green belt law. Green belt, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. Green belt. So this area, it's set aside for this. So it says the Gemara, it turns out that you're not allowed you're not allowed to make one thing another thing, the other thing the one thing, because all of the laws are specified differently. Now, if that's the case, right, since you're not allowed to do that, right, we understand, and there's specific laws that are coming out of that, we understand already the law of the Mishnah without you teaching it to me. Because if the guy is living in that space, What is he doing? The Mishnah told you have to live over here. That's what you're telling me, right? You can't live in the outer space. By definition, when a guy lives in open area, what is he turning open area into? He's changing the zoning law into a residential space. If the space is protected space, then I know he can't live there because he can't live there. Not because of the laws of the Yashav Ba. You got the question? Why did I need the Mishnah to teach me that he's only able to dwell in this space?
He already couldn't dwell in it.
I know he can't dwell in it because it's not zoned for that. Good question. Answers the Gemara. Defending this, Amar Rav Sheshet, defending Abaye, Amar Rav Sheshet, lo nitzrecha ela lemechilot. Why do we need this? We need this for tunnels that were dug. What does that mean? So let's say you have a Levi who digs a tunnel underground underneath the Migrash or underneath the Sadeh. Right? What would happen? Would you be allowed to live in that space? Yes. Why? Because I'm not disturbing the greenbelt laws. I'm not disturbing the open area laws. I'm living underground, or I'm using that underground as a living space. So therefore, since that's the case, maybe what we're assuming here is that the accidental murderer, it's not that he's living above ground, which you wouldn't need to tell me because he's not allowed to do that, but he's living in this area, but underneath the ground. Okay? I was wondering, by the way, what would happen if the guy, instead of living underground, there's areas in Southeast Asia where above the swamps, they build these big poles and they have houses above the area. Would we say the same thing the Gemara is telling us over here about mechilot underground? Would we also say that with regards to overground?
What's the reason that why you can't use the tunnels?
No, you could.
But it's the Gemara saying you're allowed to go underground?
That's what Sheshet is saying. You're asking, what's the chidush of the Mishnah? That you can't live there. Obviously you can't live there because the zoning itself doesn't let you live there. So you don't need to tell me that from the laws of Goel Hadam and accidental murderer, you can't live there. You can't live there anyway. The answer to that is, what if I found a way for you to live there in terms of the zoning? You still wouldn't be allowed to live there in terms of the Goel Hadam. So that's why you need an extra special limud to teach you that you can't live in that space.
When you say you still can't because of the Goel Adam, what does that mean? What's the reason why they can't live there?
Because the pasuk precluded you from living in that space. You have to live in the city. We gave a logic before. Maybe the Torah wanted you to be learning from the Leviim.
So then the same logic would apply up or down, right?
You're mixing 2 points. Let me explain. The Mishnah tells you that there's a preclusion in the laws of Goel Adam that doesn't allow you to live here. The Gemara asks a question: why do I need that law? You can't live there even without that law. Right. There's another law that says you can't live there.
And then it says for the guy that goes in the tunnel.
That's in the zoning. The answer is, for the zoning, I could have come up with an answer. Underground tunnels. Or maybe overground building. But still you wouldn't be allowed to do that because of this halakha. That makes this halakha necessary.
Right.
You got it?
Yes.
So the question on Abaye was, what do I need that for? Zoning laws tell me that. The answer is, I could come up with a way where zoning laws would not tell me that. And therefore, what am I doing instead? I'm doing this. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know if underground and overground are the same. I think that when it came to fields, overground would be forbidden because you're blocking the crops from sun.
But if it's a swamp,
but if it's open area, it's just so that there is open area. Who cares if there's stilts and the whole area is still open for usage, right? But my house is 10 feet above the ground. Maybe that would be. Maybe that would be okay.
City
Athena, question, yeah.
Yeah, so
Akko.
we have to define what living is because
Akko.
even when you put a mezuzah,
Akko and Jerusalem are totally different.
Right, you have to be there 30
It's like a
days
Swiss
before
cheese.
you could put a mezuzah.
Home.
Okay.
So is there like temporary, since this is a temporary situation until it's worked out of what the guilty verdict is, right? Could there be that living is after 30 days?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. She's asking, with regards to various halachot, we decide that when someone is living in an area, right, with regards to different halachot, based on a fixed amount of time. So as an example of like Chanukat Habayit, we say within the first 30 days. So she's saying maybe the concept here is that that if you're living in the area but less than 30 days, you're not excluded from V'yashavba. Good question. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. Does everyone understand the question? The question is, when we say that you can't dwell there, how long of dwelling is dwelling? With regards to other halachot, you're only dwelling after a certain amount of time. So would we say until, let's say that time is 30 days like Chanukah Rabbi. So would we say that till 29 days he could dwell in the open area? It's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Does the same apply when we say Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha in the Beit Knesset?
So when you're walking through a Beit Knesset, we learned in Masechet Megillah that you should not make a Beit Knesset kapandria, shoka. We learned that, right? So we don't say that till 29 days you're good, right? You know, we don't say that because it says Yoshveh, you know? We say that even through walking through. And in fact, we use that pasuk. We tell you, don't walk through, but sit down on the way and say the pasuk. And that's the pasuk that we say, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha. So that there we were never really referring to a set time of dwelling, like living in the shul. But it is a good example of the same word meaning different things. So you see, Yoshev over there just means we're using it just to sit. Yeah. So there's a minimal. So we have a maximal version of it and a minimal version, you know, of it. One could even go further and say that the Jewish people dwelled in Egypt. He used the word like the Yeshiv Sham. There's hundreds of years, exactly. So I don't know. We'll have to check into it. Okay.
You said you could make Hanukkah tabayis.
Oh, hey, what's up?
Anytime. Not just
You're supposed to do it in 30 days.
Oh, okay.
Let's say you forgot to do it. Doesn't mean you don't owe Hashem thank you.
Uh-huh.
You know, I don't know if you remember, I had someone that did it
later, right?
42 years after they moved in. They did Chanukah Rabbi. Better late than never. Okay, says the Mishnah. Rotzeach she'atzah chutz l'tchum. What happens if a rotzeach leaves the tchum? Okay? And now the guy, the Goel Adam found him. So do you remember what the Mishnah says? Right? The machloket was between Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. Let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says in the final words over there. Right? Rotzeach shi'atzah, you see it? On page 11b. 11b anything. Right? Rotzeach shi'atzah chutz l'tchum. A rotzeach, it's the first wide line of the Gemara. A rotzeach that leaves the boundary of the city. Umitzao goel adam, and the family relative sees him, finds him. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, mitzvah biad goel adam, he has a mitzvah to kill him. V'reshut biad goel adam. Anyone else, they're allowed to kill him because of his negligence that killed somebody. Rabbi Akiva says, no. Reshut biad goel adam, the family member is allowed to, but doesn't have an obligation to, right? V'chol adam, anyone who's not a member of the family, if they kill him, they're a regular murderer and chayavim alav. Okay? Let's see what the Gemara says. Turn back here. Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, we learned, right? Always Tanu is a Braita, Tanan is a Mishnah. Tanu Rabbanan, Veratzach Goel Adam Mitarotzeach, and the Goel Adam will kill the killer. Mitzvah biyad Goel Adam, en Goel Adam reshut in. Goel Adam reshut biyad Goel Adam. Okay? So one more time. When the Goel Adam is there, he has a mitzvah to do so. En Goel Adam, but if there's no Goel Adam present, reshut biyad Goel Adam. Anyone else has permission to do so. So one more time, let's take a look at it. What are they bringing it from? It says viratzach et Goel Adam tarotzeach, and he will kill. It doesn't sound like it's saying that he could. If he wants to, then he could. Or it's saying viratzach, and he will kill. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili learns that pasuk to mean that the Goel Adam will kill. He must kill. He must kill the guy to get justice for this act of accidental murder or negligent murder. However, en Goel Adam, if the guy's not present, there's no person there to do that. Reshut biyad Goel Adam, anyone else has permission. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that's what Rabbi Yossi Aglili says. Rabbi Kiva says, Reshut biyad Goel Adam, he has permission. He does not learn the word viratzach as a imperative, as a commandment, but rather as a after the fact descriptive terminology. Like, what happens if you did this, right? Viratzach, and you killed him.
What are we talking about with Pinchas?
Very similar, yes. If you did it, then you're allowed. Reshut bi'ad goel adam. That guy's allowed to, the family member. Chol adam. And everybody else, chayavim alav, is, what's it called? Gets the punishment for him. What did we just add with the Braita that was not in the Mishnah? It was exactly the same in the opinions. The addition in the Braita to the Mishnah is the Mishnah does not bring the pasuk. So the Braita adds the color of where Rabbi Yossi is coming from and where Rabbi Akiva is coming from. Okay?
From the words he shall kill?
From the words viratzach, exactly. Okay?
It's not like the family members can be camping outside the tchum for like 20 years.
What do you mean?
Like realistically, you chase the guy, he gets into the tchum or the ir Makkot, and then you're not going to, wait there forever and ever. You're probably going to go back home. So practically speaking, like if you were to leave the tchum, he'd probably be okay.
Well, it says umatzaoto, and he found him. So found him sounds like it happened to be. And I also wonder, like, how much vengeance does this guy feel in his heart? Maybe he picks up his stuff and moves outside the ir Miklat, waiting for the day, to be able to exact his revenge. I don't know. Depends on if it's like Wild Wild West, like is the guy dedicated his life to finding vengeance with his 6-shooters. Okay.
We're glad something went after the Nazis, right? After many
years. Yeah, the Nazi hunters, exactly. Gemara says, okay, how do we understand the machloket? What's the reason of Rabbi Yossi Haglili? Miktiv imratzach. Doesn't say if he kills. It says viratzach, and he will kill. So Rabbi Yossi Haglili learns viratzach as an imperative. The Gemara says, okay, fine. Well, how does Rabbi Akiva do this derasha? Rabbi Akiva, miktiv yirtzach. Rabbi Akiva says, it doesn't say he shall kill. It says viratzach, and he killed. So maybe it means that this is what he happened to do. And now, therefore, we don't kill him for the fact that he killed him. Okay? Now, let's see. The Gemara, this is the last piece that we'll do. Amar Marzut Rabbi Tovia Amar Rav, Marzutia the son of Tovia, said in the name of Rav, Rotzeach sheyatzach chutz tetchum, Rotzeach that goes outside, umitzal goel adam ve'harago, he finds when he kills him, neherag alav. What? This teaching in the name of Rav is neither like Rabbi Yossi, nor like Rabbi Yossi, but nor like Rabbi Akiva. Why? Let's review. What does Rabbi Akiva say about, what does Rabbi Yossi Haglili say about family member? Mitzvah, must. What does Rabbi Akiva say about family member? Optional but allowed. Comes Marzutra Bar Tovia Amarav, and he says,
forbidden.
You kill him.
Yeah, forbidden.
Right? Ne'erag alav. Not even not allowed. Remember, there's one last stage here. Rabbi Yossi says mitzvah. Rabbi Akiva says allowed. Allowed means allowed in the first place. There's another possibility. You're not allowed, but we don't kill you.
But not punishable. This is forbidden.
Mar Tovia goes step 4.
Asur.
Not only not allowed, but death penalty.
Oof.
For what? Vengeance?
For vengeance by a family member.
Vengeance by a family.
So Zutra Bar Tovia Marav is saying according to nobody. Kiman, ask the Gemara, who's this going according to? Lo ki Rabbi Yossi Haglili, velo ki Rabbi Akiva. Guys, is this going to be a big problem for us?
Oh yeah.
How could Rav disagree with the Tanaim? Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva.
And Rav came
I'm
after
setting you up.
Of course, they're not talking about the same thing.
Rav came
Wait.
after the Tanaim.
Don't say it as a question.
Rav came after the Tanaim.
No, he's the betweener. Rav, we said a bunch of times, Rav Tanahu Upalig.
Right.
That Rav is the piece in between
Right.
Tanaim and Amoraim. His rabbi is Rabbi Yehuda. After him is Amoraim. Okay, so Rav is allowed to actually argue.
Yeah.
So this rabbi, Marzutra Bar Tovia Amarav, is technically allowed to argue, but we only use it when we have to. We don't say that Rav is always arguing on the Tanaim. If we backed into a corner, then we'll say Rav Tanahu Palig. But we don't automatically assume that that is the case. The Gemara says, where does this come from? Hu Amar ki haytana. He's saying, according to this Tana, the Tanya we learn in the Braita, Rabbi Eliezer Omer ad omdo lifnei ha'eda lemishpat, until he stands in court for what he did. Ma Talmud lomar. What is the pasuk telling you? Until he stands in court for judgment, because it says in the pasuk, if he finds him outside of the safe zone, the goy adam, the family member is allowed to kill him. Yachol miyad. I might think that he does this immediately. You see the guy, murder him. Talmud lomar, no. Ad omdo lifnei ha'eda lemishpat. Until the court rules on the case. So what is Marzutra telling you? He's telling you that he left the city. This is talking about a case where the Goel Adam, he murdered this guy for leaving without any sort of court case.
He's a vigilante.
He's a vigilante post the guy leaving. Now, this is a very interesting thing over here. This last opinion of Eliezer, a very interesting thing. He's saying that when you leave the Ir Miklat, we judge you liable for death in court. And then the family member is allowed to kill you.
But isn't it another question?
What do you mean?
Another question.
What's the other question?
The question is, if the guy ran away without being judged, why would he be protected by Ir Miklat?
If the guy ran away... No. Morris, this is a second court case.
It's second court case.
Court case is, you're guilty of Galut, go to Galut. Court case number one. The guy goes to Galut. Now the guy leaves Galut. So what do we say? He's opening himself up to get killed. Says Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi says a mitzvah. Rabbi Akiva says allowed. Comes along Rabbi Eliezer and says, no. We rule on your leaving. So if we catch you out of the Galut,
without ruling that you can leave,
we take you to Bet Din, and now Bet Din says, you left the Galut. Now you're allowed to be killed by a Goel Adam. That only happens by court order, according to Rabbi Eliezer. We have never seen this before.
But then he could
this is brand new.
We never spoke about what happens when he's allowed to leave.
We spoke about cases when he's allowed to leave, when the Kohen Gadol dies. We talked about cases before the court case happens at all. We never talked about the idea that if you leave Galut, you're protected at least until the court case. We never talked about that.
Right.
We always said, you're not in the safe zone. You're not in the safe zone. The only question is, how do we look at the guy who kills you? Who's allowed to kill you? Goel Adam, everybody else. We never talked about this idea that there's a second court case where they judge you for leaving the Galut. That's Rabbi
Why do you need a
Eliezer's
second court
chidush.
case? This is a violation of the first court. He's in Galut. He's not supposed to leave. Once he leaves, he broke the rule.
Yeah, the answer is yes. He broke the rule. But who says the breaking of the rule is the death penalty? By the Goel Adam. You got to go on mute.
Well, it's not the death penalty. It's just he's fair
It's-
game.
it's-
He's fair game.
Effectively, the death penalty. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I spoke without precision. It's not that the Bet Din is exactly the death penalty. They're basically telling the Goel Adam, rabbit season. Go for it. Okay? Now, what we don't know is, what happens. I think Morris Joan is asking this.
Why does it give the non-family member or anyone else the right to kill that person?
Because that's what the Pasuk says. That when you leave, that you get killed. The question is, how do we understand that Pasuk? Rabbi Eliezer is understanding that Pasuk after a court case. My question is, what's my question? I thought Jonah was asking this. What happens now? They say, guilty, rabbit season. What happens if he now runs back to the Ir Miklat?
Oh, is he safe?
Is he safe again? I don't know.
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably yes.
Probably not. Probably
You
yes.
got a lot of killing in the safe zone.
Oh, probably yes.
Yes,
They
I
don't
think
know how
yes.
to-
So what do you think? What do you think?
I don't know.
Probably knows. He can't
Come
say.
on.
I don't know.
You know.
I don't know. But is the guy you can have a murder happen in the safe
You
zone?
can't. There's Levim, I think you said
No, I
protected
don't know,
or
man. He
allowed,
probably has
right?
to go to a different spot now. Like, that's it.
What, another safe zone?
Yeah, that's it.
New one.
Further away, you
the
know, like
fugitive.
killing Simba.
You used
Further away.
you used that one already.
This is like Hunger Games, by the way.
You burnt that home base.
You see the big red X on the board.
No, what do they call them? Safe houses? You burnt that
You
safe
burnt
house.
Exactly, that's it.
Gotta find a new one.
We're exposed. Okay. So let's see. We'll have to come back to this.
That would be like the family can actually seduce now him out by saying something like, your mother is sick, your family's sick.
He's not allowed to leave for that either.
Right, but I know that, but that would seduce him out to have rights to kill him.
I wonder what would happen if they did that. I imagine.
But they're not allowed to kill him as soon as he steps out.
I imagine that would be legal. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're lying. Imagine they start sending out the things announcing someone in his family died, and the guy comes out, risks it for the biscuit. He comes out for the funeral, and they kill him.
But they're allowed to kill him as soon as he steps out, or it has to go to court, and then they say
Only
you're eligible.
Rabbi Eliezer brings the court thing. Nobody else says that.
So as soon as you step out, everyone else is saying free game.
It depends for whom, but everyone agrees that for family, free game. Question is a mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer, so what are we doing? We're basically saying, I want you to get this, because this is very important for Gemara in general. Mar Zutra, in the name of Rav, did not say anything about a court case. What did he say?
If there's a second court case.
We said that if he leaves, then the guy and the Goel Adam kills him, right? He's killed for him. He didn't say anything about a court case.
Right.
Now we're saying that Rav is the same as Rabbi Eliezer, but he didn't mention a court case. When we found Rav saying something and it didn't fit with the Tanaim, what we looked for was another Tana that you could squeeze Rav in, even though he didn't mention the court case, but he doesn't conflict with it. So you could say that he's going according to that opinion. Do you understand what we just did? In making Rav synonymous with one of the Tanaim, we're actually changing the teaching of Mar Zutra.
We're changing the teaching, or we're adding context?
By adding context, we're changing the teaching. When we all read Mar Zutra, what did we say in the name of Rav? That if a Rotzeach leaves, killed by the family, what's halacha? The guy gets a death penalty. That's what we said.
Then we finished.
That's all Rav says.
Right. Now you're introducing a whole...
Now that we're trying to make Rav...
It undoes that halacha.
It doesn't undo it as much as gives another condition. But by giving that condition, you're undoing that halacha. You're saying, no, needs to be a court case afterwards. Because he's going according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rav never said that. And really that begs a big question. Okay? Begs a big question. If Rav is allowed to argue on a Tana, who told you to do that to Rav's teaching? If Rav's not allowed to add a Tana, he's not allowed to argue on a Tana, then you're actually finding the only place where what he said could be true. You understand? Because he can't exist if he stands in contradistinction to all the Tanaim. If Rav was someone who could not argue on a Tana. But since Rav is someone who could, who told you to change Rav in order to fit with the Tana when he doesn't need to do so?
But he opened up the door in the original thing by, he's just talking about when you go, he's not talking about when you leave. So he's bringing up that... That's not
related to this. That's not related to this case. All right? So that's a very big question. But I only brought this out because these are big Gemara questions that apply in many places. Okay, let's review. What we just did was we made Rav fit with Rabbi Eliezer. But in order to do that, what were we forced to do to Rav's teaching? Set Rav's teaching in the context of
him not being
after a court case.
Okay.
He never said that. Why did we put him into that context? Because we found one Tana that Rav could actually work with. That you're not allowed to, or a mitzvah, but you're not allowed to. Who's the one person that says that? Rabbi Eliezer. And he says that you need a court case. Now we're making Rav need a court case. So we're effectively changing Rav in order to have him match with one Tana, Rabbi Eliezer. Now, if Rav was not the type of Amorah that is allowed to argue with a Tana, that makes a lot of sense. Because if you don't put him in the column with somebody, his halacha dies.
Yeah.
But if Rav could stand on his own 2 feet without a Tana, who told you to make him the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer and then change his teaching? It's a very big question. Okay? Let's end this, okay? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Akiva, Hai ad omdo lefnei ha'eda lemishpat, ma'idar shubeh. Doesn't it say, according to them too, that you have to stand in the court? right? So where do they learn that for? They learn that for the brighter Rabbi Akiva Omer. When Sanhedrin sees someone kill somebody, that they don't kill him until he goes and stands in another court. So in other words, let's say somebody murders someone in court. That court does not just kill him then. They force him to go to stand in another court. Talmud Lomar, Ad omdo lifnei Eida lemishpat, until he stands in front of Eida lemishpat. Ad she'amod bedin acher. So this pasuk that seems to be saying that he needs to stand in a court, if you don't learn that there's another court that he needs to stand in, for this halakha to apply, if you don't learn that way, the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Eliezer use this pasuk to teach us another halakha, a random halakha, that if someone murders someone in court, that we don't rule on it on the spot. What do? We send it to another court to be judged upon. Okay? Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
So this is the